Warning. Breach detected on level 3. Initiate security protocol 115.
The financial situation of many Americans is ugly. Uglier than this Pentagon thief from Black Ops Zombies. The Pentagon thief isn't just trying to take away your weapons. He represents the overpriced subscriptions, the impulse buys, the get-rich-quick schemes trying to steal your hard-earned cash. No matter where you are in this world, he's coming for you. He's coming for your freedom. The fine people of this community don't want that. Today, we're setting up the defenses, smart investing and financial discipline to keep your money safe and working for you. We've got a loaded up video for you today. Everybody nowadays is interested in looking rich, buying a big fancy house, flexing watches, cars, and a luxury lifestyle. But on this channel, we're not like everybody else. I'm not interested in looking rich to impress a bunch of idiots. You know what I'm interested in? Actually being rich. Some of the richest people I know in my life, the normal people of Wisconsin, are not pushing Lambos, Rollies, and designer clothing. The richest normal people I know in my life, and I'm talking millions or in some cases tens of millions of dollars, they're wearing jeans, wearing a sweater, sweatshirt, and driving a Honda or a Toyota. So how do normal people accumulate wealth? It's not by buying stuff, it's investing. A lot of people have asked me to make a video on this topic and are wondering where to start, so here's my crack at it. Today's video we will discuss principles behind investing, strategies, types of accounts, stocks, historical market returns, Bitcoin, and more. I want to cover a lot, and this is kind of an information dump organized as best as I can to just present this in a straightforward way. I have a decent amount of experience investing, and it's made me quite a bit of money during the boom of the last 6 years or so. I've worked for 2 large financial firms in the last 6 years that I won't disclose their names as this video is not affiliated with them in any way. This is just to say that I've been around people talking about money for a long time. At the end of the day, we're gamers, we're strategists. So let's define the goal we want to achieve and the exact strategy to use to get there. Our main goal, our North Star, should be to make the gap between what you make and what you spend as big as you can and invest the rest with a long-term view. I don't care about what the market does next year or the year after. I'm talking a decades-long view. I'll elaborate in this video. We want to use math and history and human nature in our favor. This is a longer one, and there's lots of info, so I'll do my best to explain this to someone new while balancing providing good information, so let's get this journey started. Before we begin, a few disclaimers. Although this video covers investment principles as well as beginning steps, I'm an American and only have experience buying stocks on American markets for the most part. If you're one of my awesome viewers from Europe, the UK, or Latin America, I'd still love if you watch as I'm sure the principles are similar. A little less than half my audience is from other countries, and although I'm sure the process is similar, I'm just not as familiar with the types of accounts and markets and laws in other countries outside of America. I have a few foreign stocks, but I have a limited knowledge of investing in other places, so some of this information could differ. So if you're from another country, let me know in the comments the parallels between your system and the United States system. Next disclaimer. I'm not a professional financial advisor by any means. These are all just my opinions. Stocks and investments are risky, and you can lose money. Don't just blindly listen to some guy from Wisconsin on the internet. Do your own research and consult an actual professional to make decisions for your own situation. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about why investing is essential. We often hear this buzzword, investing, investing, investing. Well, what is investing? Investing in simple terms means putting your money into something with the goal of making it grow over time. So instead of spending your money now, you're using it to buy an asset like a stock, a bond, or real estate, and that you expect it to increase in value or generate income in the future. You can make money either through asset appreciation, which just basically means the price goes up, or through income. So think of something like a dividend where the company pays you to be an owner, or if you're a landlord and people pay you rent. Investing is a strategy of putting your money somewhere with just the expectation that you get more back in the future. It's a way for the normal man to accumulate wealth as little amounts invested over time gradually can grow to be very large amounts. There's a famous investing story about a janitor. His name was Ronald Reed, a Vermont janitor and gas station attendant who quietly amassed a fortune of over $8 million through smart investing and frugal living. Despite his modest, even low income, Ronald lived simply, saving diligently and consistently investing in high-quality dividend-paying stocks over the decades. He avoided unnecessary expenses and let the power of compound interest grow his wealth over time. His story became widely known after his death in 2014 when he donated millions of dollars to local charities and a hospital, basically demonstrating how anyone, even someone with a low-paying job, can achieve financial success through patience, discipline, and long-term investing. So how do normal people like this become millionaires? Well, there's a few ways. Let's talk about the stock market. The stock market's one of the most popular investment vehicles for millionaires. According to a 2022 study by Ramsey Solutions, 75% of millionaires invest in stocks consistently. Many millionaires invest through index funds or ETFs, individual stocks, or retirement accounts like 401ks or IRAs. Now, I'll explain all these types of accounts later in the video, so just stay with me here. First, we need to talk about inflation and why investing is essential for the common person. Many people make the mistake of having most or all of their money in cash just sitting in a bank account. This is a bad practice due to something called inflation. And you hear inflation in the news a lot, but inflation's the main reason why you need to be investing. Inflation, put simply, is when the overall prices of goods and services in an economy increase over time, and this usually happens at about 2% per year, which means that money loses its purchasing power. In simple terms, it just means that the same amount of money buys less than it did before. For example, if a loaf of bread costs $2 today and there's inflation, that might cost $2.50 or $3 in the future. Inflation just reflects how the value of money decreases as prices rise. So some inflation is a good thing. It encourages spending, which is needed to maintain a healthy economy. But it means holding large amounts of cash is a bad call in most scenarios, as you're missing out on money and actually locking in losing value over time. A prime example of inflation. In 1950, the average house price in the United States was approximately $7,000. By contrast, in the third quarter of 2024, the median home sales price had been $420,000. So an insane increase. That's why holding cash is not good for you. Prices will continue to inflate, and we need to invest in stocks to beat this over the long term. Next, I want to get into my full investing story and my takeaways from each step. So I'm 28, and I've had some success doing exactly this due to a few factors. A good market, good salary, and picking mostly safer investments and staying disciplined with investments and cheap living. I graduated university with a degree in comp sci in 2019 and had a nice job with a good salary lined up. Now that I was making significantly more money than my lifestyle, my first thought was not to buy stuff and inflate my lifestyle. Even though I had the money to buy better things, I wanted to learn about money and how it works. Not knowing what to do with the spare cash, I dove into the world of investing, reading books, articles about legendary investors like Warren Buffett, Benjamin Graham, Ray Dalio, and others. I also watched a lot of YouTube videos and tapping into some successful people in my life to pick their brains on investment basics. One thing that's made me successful in my investing journey is taking matters into my own hands and taking action. It's crucial to start this as young as you can. With my spare money, I began taking investing seriously. I opened an investment account with Ally Bank, and I mainly bought the basic large company stocks. Think Amazon, Facebook, McDonald's, as well as stuff and technology that I was interested in. So if you're watching Netflix, I would buy Netflix stock. That was my logic at the time. I also opened a 401k through my employer, which had an employer match, and I opened a Roth IRA through Schwab. I'll begin to explain all these account types later, but I just want you to know they're different investment accounts with various tax benefits. I picked safer index funds for my retirement accounts and took a little bit more risk in my taxable brokerage accounts with individual stocks. I tracked all the money I could invest each month and set financial goals for myself. By the time February 2020 rolled around, the S&P 500, which is just an index tracking 500 of the biggest United States companies, was up by quite a bit since I started. And I had investment accounts worth about $40,000 in value, which is great for a 24-year-old. My hard work and cheap lifestyle was paying off. And then COVID hit, and markets crashed about 33%. Within about a week, I lost about $15,000 on paper. My hard work was vanishing into thin air. That's months and months of hard work and savings for me. And for many people, a lot of people lost years in life savings or even their lives during COVID. I'd never seen anything like it, and panic was in the air, both about COVID and the financial health of Americans, especially older Americans. I really wanted to sell my stocks to avoid future losses, but the people in my life were telling me now is the time to double down, when everyone else is selling. As Warren Buffett once said, be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. I didn't know it at the time, but a generational investment opportunity was presenting itself in the face of all the chaos. I decided to double down. I moved back in with my parents, tried to invest literally everything I had during this downturn. The market ended up rebounding aggressively at the second half of 2020, and my investment portfolio exploded due to being able to buy stocks at such cheap prices. From there, I continued to keep the gap between my salary and my expenses as strong as I could, investing tens of thousands of dollars per year, and during corrections and off years like 2022, I would double down and invest more over time. So I took advantage of cheap prices when I could. As the market kept going up and up and up, my portfolio turned into several $100,000, and each correction was an opportunity to add more to the game. And that led me to where I am now, where I could comfortably quit my job and take some time off to follow my dreams and get away from the 9-to-5 grind that I was growing tired of. Without investing, I can seriously say I'd have like half the money that I do now, with like a 6-figure lifetime gain from investments. And even better yet, my investment portfolio pays me about $600 per month in dividends for doing nothing other than being an investor in these companies. And I want that number to grow over time, since it's literally money for doing nothing other than having money. As I said earlier, this is what I want our mindset to be. When you have extra money, don't think about where am I going to spend it. Think about how am I going to invest it so it becomes more money for me in the future. My overall strategy was to maintain a high salary and keep expenses as low as I can and invest the rest in the stock market. The biggest flex is not buying the expensive thing. It's knowing that you have the ability to buy said expensive thing many times over again. Again, we want to invest often. We also want to think about taxes, which can really reduce your investment gains. This mindset also involves using accounts with tax benefits, aka legally paying less taxes. Principles like diversification, not putting too many eggs in one basket or too much of your money into one thing is also important. I invest in many industries, asset types, and companies, and invest with a long-term view. When I buy a stock, I like to pretend that I won't even consider touching that money for a decade or longer. Most of the time, I invest based on value, not speculation. I want to understand what I'm buying and ideally want something that's making money for me in the future. I don't get fancy. I simply purchase stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, not options or any sort of leverage bet. So for this next part, little disclaimer, there's some boring yet beautiful math here, but it's crucial to understand how investing works, so I'll explain as best as I can. There's a formula here that runs our life, whether we know it or not, and here it is. This is the formula for compound interest. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details of the math, but this equation is a predictor of how much money you can gain from investments. Know that arguably the most important and exponential variable in this equation is time. Now, what do I mean by exponential? In simpler terms, if you start younger, it is much easier to get rich and you have to contribute much less because your money has a longer time horizon to grow and grow. The longer the time you have invested, the easier it is to accumulate money. Now, why learn? Why are you showing me these stupid charts? Well, here's why. Here's the return of the United States stock market over time. This has historically been about 7 to 10% per year. So as long as America is growing and prosperous, the market should still continue to go up over time. Here's a chart of the returns per year. Notice the numbers are compressed at the top. If the chart was actually expanded outwards, it would look a lot like that exponential formula. Here's a different chart showing the annual returns each year in a bar graph. You'll notice that the positive years far outweigh the negative years. There's some good ones, some bad ones, but from the beginning to the end, it usually goes up about 10% per year over time. Now, do some math for yourself. You can assume a 7 to 10% return per year on average, and this should make you some good money over the long term. Now, past performance is not an indicator of future success, and there's no guarantee we'll have these same returns over the next 100 years that came before us, but I like betting on America. I wouldn't bet against it. The more money you have at play, the more you accumulate as it grows. For example, if you have $1,000 invested and the market goes up 10%, you made $100. But if you have $10,000, you made $1,000. And if you have $100,000 or even $1 million invested, you're making some legit money just from the stock market. It can go up or down on a yearly basis, but over time, it trends upward. Imagine if you had $100,000 invested last year in 2023. The stock market went up 16%, which means that your investment gain would have been $16,000 for doing nothing other than investing. It can also go down like it has a few times in my life, but overall, it trends upward. This is why the rich get richer. It's just math. Take advantage of investing while young. It means you get more opportunity for your money to grow. You'd rather be a 20-year-old investing $80 a month than a 35-year-old who just started to invest $500 a month. Plus, when you're young, there's less expenses, life's cheaper, and it's socially acceptable to just be a cheapo. But if you're 30 and you're still living with your parents, people might ask what the hell you've been doing all these years. But why learn? Inflation's going to eat away, and $1 million today might not be $1 million in 40 years. Well, you're right. $1 million today will definitely not be $1 million in 40 years, but would you rather have cash? Absolutely not. Investing's a way to beat inflation over the long term. Like, you don't care what the price of McDonald's is if it increases if you own a portion of McDonald's. Use stocks to beat inflation. Okay, so now we know that we're taking a long-term view to invest in a nice and stable asset that goes up over time. What mistakes could I possibly make? Well, many. Stocks go down a lot, and it's human nature to sell to avoid losses. When everyone else is selling and the prices are lower, this is exactly when you should be buying. That's how I profited off of a lot of these downswings. It's inevitable that stocks will lose value from time to time. Think of the stock market like a grocery store sale. If you walk into a grocery store and everything's 30% off, you'd be like, hell yeah. But for some reason with stocks, everybody freaks out and nobody wants to buy them. Treat it similarly. When prices drop, it's an opportunity to buy more stocks on sale. These downturns allow disciplined investors to accumulate shares at lower prices, setting the stage for greater gains when the market rebounds. They say the stock market is just a tool for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. Use that quote wisely. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of options trading, as it can be a complex process with a lot more math and risk involved. Options and leverage allows investors to control more assets with less money, but they come with higher risks. You can purchase a contract or a right to buy a large amount of someone's shares, basically trading with debt or leveraged money, aka money that's not yours. It means you're amplifying your risk with other people's money. This can be great if it works out for you, but awful if it doesn't, as you might owe a lot more money to someone than you'd be comfortable with. You can bet on fancy things like a stock to go down in 3 days or volatility to remain stable and much more. And it often involves deeper and much more complex strategy than normal people should worry about. You have other better options, haha, no pun intended. As a rule of thumb, I avoid trading with money that's not mine. I don't use margin, I don't use debt. I stay away from all that so I can sleep well at night. Stock options can be given to you by an employer with a publicly traded company, and this is fine, but I haven't gone out of my way to trade options. Unless you really know what you're doing, stay away from this. Know the difference between gambling and investing, and be an investor. I don't believe in short-term investments. Some people trade for a few minutes, for a day, a week. To me, this seems more like gambling than investing. There are entire firms of people with PhDs in mathematics and economics from Harvard and Yale working on short-term trading models who still have issues succeeding. So do you really think little old you can beat them over the long term? There's just too many variables. Like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in the market in the next 5 minutes. So why bet on the outcome? I recall when I began investing in 2019, Trump was in the peak of his tariff war with China, and a simple tweet that he'd send at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday could send the market in a frenzy. So why try to predict same-day things when one tiny event could ruin it all? Betting on earnings, week-to-week fluctuations might be a bad idea, and I've got burned a few times doing this. My most recent fail with gambling instead of investing was trying to buy Spirit Airlines, just gambling on the fact it wouldn't go bankrupt, and that did not work out for me. So know the difference between gambling and investing. Gambling means that you're going to the casino, and mathematically you know that it's a bad use of your money. Investing means owning the casino, where you know it's rigged in your favor. Anytime someone says that you can get a huge return and be rich in 1 year with this NFT or this crypto that's going to blow up tomorrow, your radar should be buzzing. You are only going to make someone else rich quickly by participating in these games, likely involving a high amount of risk that's just not worth it. Can it happen? Yes. But is it likely to happen? No. You want to know what is more likely to happen? The market to slowly go up about 10% over the long haul. If an actual tool came out that could guarantee a 50% return on investment monthly, it would break the entire financial system. The risk has to be somewhere, so stay away from people promising to make you millions next month. Next, let's go over the high-level steps in a plan to start investing. This is a hybrid of many systems inspired by people like Dave Ramsey, Warren Buffett, and more. Now, this is only for investments, does not include debt. Any high-interest debt should be prioritized very highly in this list. So step 1 would be having 3 to 6 months of living expenses or some sort of emergency plan saved up. This is otherwise known as the shit happens fund. You never know when a surprise expense comes up. You need to repair something in your car, or something in your house breaks, maybe your refrigerator needs a repair. Stuff like that happens all the time. It needs to have a plan so you're not stressed out when unexpected expenses come up. Step 2 would be to invest in a 401k, ideally with a company match or a company HSA if available. Step 3 would be to invest in a Roth IRA for tax-free growth. Both of those are just basically tax-advantaged accounts I'll get into later. Number 4 would be a taxable brokerage account once you've exhausted options 2 and 3. And step 5, if you want, would be alternative assets that are a little bit riskier, maybe a little bit smaller percentage of your portfolio, something like crypto or collectibles. Now, I'll talk more about all these accounts in more detail in the next section, but my strategy was to buy mostly safer things like Triple Q, VIG, VYM, SPY, VTSX, and bigger staples like Amazon, McDonald's, and other things. All of those are just symbols for ETFs or index funds. Now, I'd use a small amount of my money, less than 5% of my portfolio, for riskier things like Bitcoin or collectibles. I'd invest more during downturns and otherwise consistently each month put a little bit of my paycheck into these investments. I'd reinvest dividends, and I have faith that the markets will go up over time. Now, let's get into some of the types of accounts that I used. First is a checking account, which is a simple bank account to just receive checks, receive your money, transfer money, pay credit cards, which you should only use if you can pay them off in full every month. And I'd keep enough money here to just buy month-to-month items or for an emergency fund. Nothing crazy, very low yield. A savings account can also be used to park money for a little bit of time to have a little bit more yield, like a couple of percentage points, maybe for an emergency fund. I'll provide some great options for this on the screen. Next would be a 401k or a traditional IRA. So this is a retirement account usually given to you through your employer, which means that you don't pay taxes at the time of earning the money, and it goes into this account, and this non-taxed money grows with the stock market. Usually gets invested into some mutual fund or whatever you choose, and then you pay taxes when you withdraw it. So this is a retirement account, which means it will be penalized. It has contribution limits that I'll put on the screen, and oftentimes with an employer match, which is just free money. That basically means if you invest 5% into a 401k, the company might match that and give you 5% more. I had mine through Empower and Vanguard. The next one's my personal favorite, which is a Roth IRA. This must be set up manually. I did mine with Charles Schwab, and the money that goes in's already been taxed, so you just transfer the money over and it grows tax-free. That's why there's a low limit on it and also an income limit. So that's how you know it's a cheat code, when the IRS totally limits what you can do with it. So imagine if you have $500,000 in a 401k, you're going to pay taxes on at least $100,000 of that. But if you have it in a Roth IRA, there are no taxes. So that's why I love it. Next account that I use is an HSA. This is a health savings account. I believe you need to be part of a high deductible health insurance plan, either through a marketplace or through your employer to be able to have this. But basically, it's kind of combines a little bit of the 401k and the Roth IRA. It's tax free at the time of earning it when it goes into the account, and then as long as it's used for a medical expense, it's tax-free out. So it's a triple tax benefit, which is very, very useful account. And we all have medical expenses as well. So this is definitely one I'd recommend. Now, if you max out all the above options that are tax advantaged, the next is to just buy individual stocks in a taxable brokerage account. So that means the money that goes into it's already been taxed, and you must be taxed afterwards on things like capital gains and dividends. This has grown to be my biggest account, mainly due to income limitations on the other ones. And there's some other accounts too, obviously, that I haven't gotten into. These are just what I've used. There's others like a Roth 401k, an FSA, and a 529, and these are all just used for a variety of situations. So why does account type matter? And the answer is taxes and fees. Taxes can eat away at your gains. For example, if you have $1 million in a 401k when you retire, congratulations, but it still must be taxed, and you'll likely be paying a few $100,000 in taxes. In a Roth, no taxes. So you want to utilize the tools that we have here in America. I try to legally avoid paying taxes through tax-advantaged accounts. You have to pay taxes on things in a tax scenario such as an individual brokerage. This can be either dividends, so when you get payments from the company that you have to do taxes on that at the end of the year, as well as capital gains, which just means you buy a stock at a certain price, you sell it at a higher price, and that difference you have to pay taxes on. Eventually, with investments, when get more into the investing world, you'll no longer get a tax refund. You'll actually be paying the IRS back money that you gain from your investments. I consider it a good thing and a mature thing in your investment journey. So let's get into some of the concrete stuff here. How to open an account. Go onto a site of a well-known broker, and I prefer the big guys. So think like Charles Schwab, E-Trade, TD, Ameritrade, stuff like that. And select an account type, enter your info, and they will ask for your sensitive information. Don't be alarmed, and create an account. Once it's created, you'll need to link your bank account to transfer money in. Do not invest off of debt or credit. Use your own money, okay? Transfer your own money in, damn it. So now let's talk about how to buy a stock or an ETF. You have some options here. The most common ones would be a stock or an ETF, which is either a publicly traded company or a grouping of publicly traded companies. So they have stock tickers, which is just basically a code or an abbreviation for that stock. So for example, Amazon is AMZN is the ticker. And you can easily look these up on Google. So you can also buy an ETF, which is an exchange-traded fund, which is basically just a mix of companies, which is a little bit less risk. So they're all traded on an exchange, usually a place or a market where people come together to buy and sell stocks. The New York Stock Exchange is the most well-known one. So stocks will likely need to be purchased during normal trading hours if you do a market order, otherwise off-hours trading. So open hours outside of holidays are 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So here's a look at an example order screen. You select the symbol, which is just the stock ticker. So you can look that up on Google. Strategy would be stock or ETF. An action would be either to buy or sell in most scenarios. You select the quantity. Notice in the upper right, you have the share price, which means that if you buy 8 shares at $500, this would be about a $4,000 purchase. This is just an example. If the stock pays dividends, you can usually check to reinvest dividends, which I would do that if the stock offers dividends. The order type, I like to use market, but you can use limit if you need to, which just basically means you set the price of what you want to buy it at, the timing for how long you want the order to be open. And this, just the way it is laid out on the screen, you would be buying at the current market price. So go through the ticket, select all that stuff, and then once you hit submit order, then you wait for them to confirm that the order was filled, and then congratulations, you're an investor. Now, which stocks do we buy and for how long? This can be a very complex and debated topic, but I would say safe, stable companies, lower PE, good growth, a history and track record of success, or a super innovative product. I'd stick to safer stuff for strong companies unless you really know a lot about the company. Some of the ETFs I like would be the QQQ, which is just basically a collection of the biggest tech companies in America, or SPY, which basically tracks the American market, the S&P 500. Some index funds I own, especially in my retirement, would be VTTSX, which I believe is a index fund or mutual fund. I don't really remember. But that's basically like an account for people retiring in 2060. If you're more interested in individual stocks, they're more risky, but they can be good as well. And there's a lot of theory as to which ones to buy. There's value investing. There's all sorts of things you can do there. But I prefer to be a value investor. Like, think of good technology or things you may know about and try to understand it and research into the company and see if you can find some good deals. Now, how long to hold? This is a loaded question. I would say ideally a very long time horizon. I hope you're seeing my point here. Mathematically, the longer you hold on to stocks, the better off they do. Let's look at this chart. If you hold stocks for less than a year, you basically have like a 35 to 40% chance of losing money. But if you hold a stock 10 years, that odds reduces to about 12%. And if you hold a stock for 20 years, or especially if it's an ETF or something that represents America, your odds of losing money are slim to none. Use math in your favor here. The longer you hold on to stocks, the more high of a probability it is to go up. So let's talk about dividends. Dividends are my favorite passive income. Some companies pay out a portion of their earnings back to shareholders. This is called dividends. I like this because it shows company stability. It gives you a little bit extra income. So how can you retire sustainably? Well, you'd usually have like a mix of a 401k and some sort of investment portfolio with a dividend yield. So if you have $1 million and the dividend yield is 3%, you'd be making around $30,000 more just for doing nothing. That's a lifetime goal of mine, and I love loading up on dividend stocks. Now, hopefully I've convinced you to buy safer stuff for a long time horizon, using tax benefits, looking mostly into ETFs or index funds, and maybe dabbling in individual stocks if you're interested in doing the research. But it's important to remember that risk is always present and stock dips are common. For example, a correction, which is when the market drops 10% or more from a recent high, occurs every 1 to 2 years. Recessions usually happen every 5 to 10 years, and this is a 20% decline in stocks, followed by a decline in GDP. Depressions are much rarer in a severe economic event, but they're still possible as well. We remember back to the Great Depression in the 1930s as an example where the stock market dropped, I believe, 90% from its high, which is nuts. So these are rare, but serve as just a reminder that the stocks bounce back. They always come back. Remember the grocery store example. If stock prices are lower, go shopping. I want us to be dollar cost averaging, which just means investing a fixed amount of money on a regular basis and maybe even more if stocks are down. The market's overall trend has been upwards over the long terms. Corrections, recessions, and even rare depressions are just temporary setbacks in a much larger growth story. By staying invested and consistently adding to your portfolio and not panic selling, you can take advantage of the long-term growth and avoid emotional decision-making. Patience is key. Successful investing is about time in the market, not timing the market. Let's talk about some other asset classes, such as houses and cars. In most cases, cars are a depreciating asset, unless it's a super old collectible or rare car. But be cheap, as cars are basically a guarantee to lose money. You have to kind of be a car guy to derive enjoyment from this. Houses can be a good investment, especially if you're in an up-and-coming area and you'll stay in that area for a longer period of time, usually 10 years or more, and you can make an adequate down payment, and it's a mortgage you can afford. However, one thing I've noticed is that many people are just too eager to buy a house and often bite into a bad situation too early. There seems to be an American obsession with, I gotta buy a house, I need to own a house. It's this status symbol. But in my mind, there's no rush to own a house, especially if you're investing your money in other things like stocks. So just be careful with that, do your research, and make sure you make a wise decision that's within your means. Now let's talk about the fancy buzzword, crypto and other assets. And my advice for these is to be careful. These can be tricky. In one way, they're a speculative asset, which means you're buying something that's not producing an income or being productive, just banking that someone else will buy it and pay more for it in the future. For example, if you're buying a share of McDonald's, this is a productive asset. You know McDonald's is a company that's generating monetary value in the world and pays you back in dividends each time someone buys a McDouble. Gold, Bitcoin, collectibles are not income producing assets. It's a totally different class. Digital assets like Bitcoin are highly volatile and speculative. They may seem intriguing, and there's a case to be made for these use cases and viability of Bitcoin as a store of value and a transactional currency. But I see too many young guys putting all their money in this with the hopes to get rich quick. I would say to be very careful. Most people pushing crypto and Bitcoin probably couldn't even tell you what cryptography is or what the blockchain even is. And if you're one of those people with all your money in crypto and you can't even tell me the basics of crypto and blockchain and the ledger, you don't understand what you're buying, straight up, and you should probably think twice before blindly buying things. Another example of an asset is gold. It's traditionally thought as a safe haven asset that holds value over time, especially during economic uncertainty, but it doesn't generate any income like dividends or rent, so a lot of people say it shouldn't be a huge part of your portfolio. Another thing that I've dabbled in is collectibles. I used to trade NFL football trading cards and other things like watches or rare memorabilia. They can appreciate in value, but as with most stuff in this category, they're highly speculative, often illiquid, which just means it's harder to sell than a stock where you can basically sell the moment of during market hours, and this makes them a risky investment. Plus, it can lose value. Like if a trading card gets destroyed or has damage, it can lose virtually all its value. I'm not telling you whether or not you should buy any of these. I have a little bit of all three. But be careful with them, especially crypto and collectibles, as they're definitely riskier. So that was a big why learn brain dump for you guys, and I hope you found something useful out of it. I found it hard to compress all of this even into just 30 minutes because this is a lot of stuff and you could go into each of these for hours and hours and hours. So if you want me to do that, let me know. But I hope you understand that this was it was a difficult video to make, and I tried to make it as organized as I can, and it was just kind of a brain dump. So hope you enjoyed it. I hope I got my point across that we should strive to be smart, disciplined investors who don't overreact. We take a long time horizon and invest in things we understand and are confident that are going to go up over the long haul. A little bit each month adds up, so start now. So much to talk about, and I want to expand on these, but here it is. Let me know what you think. Remember to be careful, take a long-term view, and get rich slowly. Peace out, everyone.